It's been years since I've played a Call of Duty campaign as entertaining, intriguing, and just flat out fun as Black Ops 6's campaign. The mission variety, replayability, and overall storytelling kept me hooked, especially after MW3's abysmal entry. We'll go through all the positives, the negatives, and even a bit of speculative theory on the ending that has me questioning where they'll take the story from here. There will be some spoilers throughout, so be sure to check the chapters so you know where they might occur. The Black Ops 6 campaign takes place during the 1990s, a transformative decade marked by the aftermath of the Cold War, the rise of new global threats, and rapid technological advancements. This period sees the collapse of the Soviet Union, conflicts like the Gulf War, and emergence of rogue factions exploiting the power vacuum left by the Cold War's end. In the opening mission, Troy Marshall, Case, and Jane Harrow are CIA operatives tasked with extracting Iraqi minister Saeed Alawi. But their mission goes awry when Alawi claims to be targeted by the rogue paramilitary group Pantheon. Pantheon is a shadowy global organization operating behind the scenes during the volatile 1990s. Its members include a coalition of rogue military leaders, intelligence operatives, and industrialists, many of whom rose to prominence during the Cold War. With the dissolution of the Soviet Union and the geopolitical vacuum, the Pantheon exploits the chaos to pursue its own agenda of dismantling the control of the CIA. As the team investigates Pantheon's activities, Case uncovers his own connection to a secret CIA project involving the psychochemical weapon Cradle, while an unexpected betrayal occurs, prompting the team to have to hunt down one of their own. The biggest shift this year from my perspective was the clear thought behind the mission design, pacing, and desire for players to come back and play through the missions multiple times. Modern Warfare 3's marketing focused heavily on open combat missions, but in reality, it was their way of reusing Warzone assets that felt incredibly forced and lazy. Black Ops 6, however, shines in this aspect as there's a beautiful balance between classic run and gun, stealth, and memorable psychological missions that stays true to the Black Ops brand. I genuinely believe Black Ops 6 executed this well enough to be in the conversation of top 5 campaigns in COD history. I found myself excited to play the next mission, knowing that there'd be a new challenge or mechanic to explore. I genuinely love to play stealth when given the opportunity, and multiple times throughout the campaign I was given that chance and even rewarded when I chose to do so, whether it was through collectibles that could be used to upgrade my abilities or unlockable calling cards. These benefits led to me completing missions multiple times. For players who are primarily interested in the single player experience, it extends the life of the game and makes their purchase far more worth it. Being incentivized to go through the missions multiple times shows the intention to this player base who may have felt forgotten for many years in a row. I also found the pacing to be perfectly balanced between chaotic combat scenes and downtime where I could explore the safe house and engage in extended dialogue trees with the characters. This attention to detail allowed me to buy in on the story and provided opportunities to get invested into the characters on my team. Even when leaving the safe house, there were missions that required a bit of choice that led to different strategies later in the mission. The best example of this was Hunting Season, which felt like an open world COD where players had a main quest and additional side quests. The player could choose to complete all of the side quests and gain access to kill streaks that could be used later in the mission. This felt so much more intentional than the open world missions in MW3. However, the most memorable mission for me was Emergence, which sends players into the biochemical lab where Cradle was being developed. This felt very on brand for a Black Ops game, with the psychological elements being weaved throughout the mission beautifully. As an OG shooter player, it reminded me a ton of the Fear series, and it had me turning around every time I went down a shadowy hallway. I'd recommend playing the campaign to all players just so they get to experience this mission. I genuinely would be willing to debate that this cemented itself as a top 5 memorable mission in COD history. While there were a ton of positives, I did find a few negatives through my playthrough, especially as someone who plays the campaign each year. It seems like the use of a dangerous bioweapon falling into the wrong hands has been used a dozen times throughout COD campaigns. It becomes so predictable that the good guys have a weapon, the bad guys steal it, and the good guys have to stop the bad guys from using it. I would like to see a shift away from that for at least a couple campaigns, and instead get a bit more creative with a way to up the stakes versus a repeated global catastrophic weapon aimed at destroying the United States. As someone who has a history of playing shooters, I find the lack of strategy for killing elite enemies disappointing. I'd like there to be more of a challenge than just unloading multiple magazines on juggernauts or shielded enemies. Harder difficulty should not just mean that players use more bullets to kill enemies. I also found the 1990s an exciting setting, as I haven't found myself playing through many shooters set during that time period. However, the events of the campaign feel very disconnected from the 90s, aside from using an old digital camera, Saddam Hussein being in power, and seeing Bill Clinton referenced as a governor. They could have done a lot more to incorporate the Gulf War era, but it didn't necessarily pull me out of the story either. More of a missed opportunity. Lastly, I would have loved to have a campaign that was 10 to 15 hours long with multiple endings. Black Ops 2 providing multiple endings made it one of the most memorable campaigns in COD history. The last few missions were a lot of fun, but did feel a bit rushed, and I think a couple extra hours hours could have made that feel a lot better paced. There's a ton of speculation as to who the mystery character is at the end of the game. Names like Bell, Case, Alex Mason, and others have been thrown around with a bunch of entertaining theories. For starters, I find it hard to believe that it would be Bell since some of the characters are already familiar with him and would recognize him. He isn't totally confirmed to be dead after being shot at the end of Cold War by Adler, but it seems like it'd be a stretch. People have also said that Bell may turn into Case, which is an interesting theory because the timelines would line up for when Bell was shot and when Case started getting experimented on. However, considering Case's exposure to Cradle during the game's final helicopter sequence, this cutscene would imply that Pantheon now controls him, positioning him as a potential antagonist in future installments rather than the mystery man at the end. Theories about Alex Mason being alive have confirmed to be false, and the ending in BO2 where Mason is killed are canon according to Treyarch. Jackson Cain is widely speculated to be the mystery man introduced to set up the seasonal multiplayer storyline for Black Ops 6's evolving post-launch content. In the first scene, you can see him sitting in the debriefing taking notes, making it clear that he's infiltrated the CIA as a member of Pantheon. As one of the available multiplayer skins, Cain is described as the leader of Crimson 1, a Pantheon kill squad tasked with eliminating Frank Woods and his Black Ops team. Given Cain's relentless pursuit of Woods and his team, it would make sense for this storyline to serve as a teaser at the end of the campaign to bridge into the ongoing multiplayer content. Personally, I think it is Jackson Cain as they'd want us to be familiar with the character ahead of seasonal storytelling. Do you think it's one of these characters or potentially someone else? The Black Ops 6 campaign exceeded my expectations, especially after the dumpster fire that was MW3's storyline. Not only did it provide enough variety to remain entertaining throughout the 8-hour playthrough, but I still find myself wanting to go back to knock out various calling card challenges and achievements. I feel decently connected to the characters, and I'm left with some memorable moments that I'd love to see incorporated into future releases. I'm giving the campaign a strong 8.5 to a light 9, and honestly, I see this as a hopeful turning point in the single-player experience for Call of Duty. Do you think this was one of the best campaigns you've played, or could they have done more?